Hello and welcome to the Cheeseman Podcast. This is Brendan, your host for the show. As has been widely publicised, both on this podcast and throughout the media, Tottenham Hotspur are increasing their ticket pricing significantly for this season, as well as changing rules regards to concessions and also the banding for the category of different games. So, as we know, there is a protest organised by the Supporters Trust ahead of the United game on Saturday. So we're delighted to be joined by a friend of the pod, Rachel, who is on the board of the Supporters Trust and on the Fan Advisory Board. How are you, Rachel?
Hi, I'm fine. It's lovely to be back again with you. Looking forward to talking about all of this really important campaign.
Yeah, we'll talk football as well. We'll do a quick United preview. We're also delighted from someone on the fab to someone who's always dressed fab. We're joined by Tim Vickery. How are you, Tim?
Well, lovely to be here, and I'm looking forward to learning over the next few minutes, especially with the Mr. Tracy, FAB. I'm loving this. I'm really looking forward to learning over the course of this podcast.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us, Tim. Also co-hosting, as he's going to contribute excellently to this conversation, and definitely not because there was a power cut in Brazil on Tuesday and I'm worried it'll happen again. We're joined by Franco. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm totally here if everything goes wrong at your end, aren't I, Brent? But no, I'm looking forward to this chat, something I feel very passionate about. Talked about it on the pod for a while. For me, it's almost like the final straw. So I'll be there Saturday getting ready to protest and stand up for the fans of this great club.
Exactly. So, as I said, the first section of the pod will be about the ticket price rises. So, these are the key facts that are happening this season. Matchday ticket prices have increased from between £3 and £15 for Category B and C games, and between 10 and 17 for Category A games, meaning that a regular ticket for a Category A game can be £103 just for the ticket. Premier League fixtures have been recategorised by the club to include more matches in the higher price bands. Tickets in some of the cheaper sections of the stadium have been replaced by higher prices. The increase will generate roughly £2.5 million, 2.4% of match receipt income, or 0.6% of club's total income. So, Rachel, I'll start with you, clearly. We've been podding together for about 4 years now, I think, and we always do ask you about protesting. Will the trust support a protest, and you resisted, even in the face of the ESL debacle, which we have to call it debacle, the proposed move to Stratford. So why now? Why now is the trust protesting these changes?
I mean, first of all, I would just say, when you say that we didn't protest or we resisting protesting, we have protested, but it's just about how you protest. And so, I mean, obviously, the Olympic Stadium debacle, we're going to be mentioning a few debacles, I think, in this pod. But the Olympic Stadium one, that was 2010. So, 13 years ago, the trust has changed enormously in that time. The leadership's changed. That was before Cat and Martin's days, and where we deliberately made ourselves more distant and more independent of the club. With regard to the European Super League debacle, we absolutely protested, but we didn't organise rallies. The protests that we did, for example, we had a demonstration outside the ground of like-minded people with fans in football first as the slogan. We made a film with lots and lots of Spurs supporters and the local MP, which got a lot of traction on social media and in the press. And of course, we had a meeting with our fans, not with our fans, with Spurs fans, but our trust members, who almost unanimously supported our motion that we would call for the board to resign. So we most certainly did protest over the ESL, but of course it folded incredibly quickly. So we felt that what we did was appropriate, but also that just because it folded didn't mean that we shouldn't record how much we were against that. In terms of this issue and why are we actually organising a big demonstration and we're asking everybody to get involved, it's because we feel that the club have made a choice here. This isn't something they had to do. They're the 9th richest club in world football. They have been charging the highest ticket prices, although they are spread, but basically the highest prices in the Premier League, overtaken this year by Fulham. You know, congratulations, Fulham. You're now for that one. But this is not something they needed to do. We are in a cost of living crisis, and they quoted their discussions with the Trust and the cost of living crisis when they froze season ticket prices. That cost of living crisis hasn't gone away, and it doesn't not apply to people who are buying match day tickets rather than a season ticket. And in fact, I mean, I quoted, myself when I was bringing up my daughter. We had no money. I was trying to, I was a single parent, getting myself through university as well as raising my child and training to be a teacher. We couldn't afford a season ticket, but we could afford maybe twice a year to go to Spurs. And my daughter, caught it, thank goodness. She's now a season ticket holder as well. We go to the matches together. I used to go with my dad. It's a generational thing. It's really, really important. And we just feel that an increase at this time is really just not listening to the room. It's, a drop in the ocean to them. I know 2.4 million might sound like a lot, but their money comes from TV rights, from corporate sponsorship, from retail. Ticket revenue is a minute part of their income. And there are other ways of doing this. And we just feel enough is enough. You are exploiting the loyalty of fans. We can't just go and support another club. We don't want to. We love the club. We want to feel that you love us as well. And this is something, it's not about ENIC out. It's not about anything else. It's a simple issue. Please think again, stop the price rises and stop exploiting fan loyalty. And that's why we're asking everyone to come along to the demonstration.
Yeah, well, the club would defend themselves perhaps by stating that they haven't increased season ticket pricing, but the Trust was heavily involved in that happening. Like, did they want to increase season ticket pricing as well? How hard were those negotiations between you guys for season ticket pricing?
Yeah, I mean, the club would say quite a lot of things, in their defence, including they didn't put the season ticket prices up. But yeah, we had to fight really hard on that one. And we were helped, I have to say, by Antonio Conte, Stellini, results on the pitch. I think, as well as everything that we were saying, I think they just, at that timing, there really would have been an absolute outcry, which was a point we made very, very loudly. The club say they haven't put prices up since the stadium opened, but of course the issues that you raised at the beginning, Brendan, they have. It's just by rearranging, which seats cost what, having no concessions on the ticket exchange. There are so many ways that the prices are going up, recategorizing the games. Newcastle is now an A match, category A for Newcastle. And, the groups have come out of C category into B. Teams have, sorry, for absolutely no reason other than to put prices up.
Well, Tim, I'll come to you now. You actually visited the new stadium for the first time was it May that you went over for the Palace game? What was that experience like? What do you think of the new Tottenham?
Well, I love the stadium. I loved it. I mean, I love the fact that it can be both huge and intimate at the same time. I thought it was, I didn't feel, just because it's next door to where we used to be, I didn't feel any sense of displacement. I felt a sense in that regard of development, because the stadium, the old White Hart Lane, all right, we loved it, but it was never big enough for a club with Tottenham's pretensions. The size of the stadium was always a limitation. As someone really, my culture as a supporter of Tottenham was still like paying on the turnstile. You know, you pay your $4.50 on the turnstile, and you're in it. And I can be accused, and rightly so, of just being out of touch with the modern world. But sometimes I'm very happy with that, because I see so much of this situation as a metaphor for what the country has become. It's a model of economics based on extraction rather than production. And it's people who are aware of the price of everything and the value of nothing. Because I would imagine this, both of you have made the point. In terms of the overall finances of the club, this is not relevant. It's you lose much more in PR than you gain in revenue. It's not relevant. So how on earth has this happened? And I can only imagine that it's a case of like line managers and someone down the line in the ticketing process having a target to reach, you know, and he's got to up revenue by X, and if he does that, then he's done his job. And that really is the price of everything and the value of nothing, because the consequences of that for the essence of the club are disastrous. Because you're turning away people who've been there generation after generation after generation, and in a stadium with that capacity, that just isn't necessary. And if we were still dealing with somewhere where you can only have 35,000, then all right, you want to compete with the best, then maybe there'd be a justification. But when you've got a stadium of this size, surely it's in the long term, it's good business sense to cultivate those people who have always been the essence of the club, so it seems to me that maybe history will judge the moment when Abramovich came in at Chelsea as the moment when the train left the station, and since then, the work, the excellent work that the trust and Fab, it's limited to trying to humanize the owners. And I would have hoped that when they make such an unbelievably stupid mistake as a Super League, that gives more leverage to people like Rachel. To what extent do you think that leverage still exists, Rachel? Do you think that's still there, or have they kind of forgotten that, move on, let's go to the balance sheet of the next year and see how much we can extract?
And that's a really good question. I think I have to believe that there is still some leverage, or there is no point doing this role. They've set up a fan advisory board, and they've heralded it. This is obviously as a direct result of the European Super League debacle and the fan-led review. And I was lucky enough to be part of the trust delegation that spoke to the panel at Parliament and put the case. And obviously we argued to have a fan on the board, and that wasn't included in the arrangements. But there is more teeth now to the fan advisory board. The trust were absolutely an integral part of negotiating for the way the Fab is. And I think there's quite a good balance between the trust working on a whole range of issues with the club on a day-to-day basis, because we have such an overall knowledge. We have a lot of expertise on the trust about ticketing, for example, and all sorts of issues that affect supporters. But and of course, the Football Supporters Association, who we work with so closely, can really help us. But the Fan Advisory Board is a fantastic opportunity representing a diverse range of football supporters and groups. But we've got to make sure that it isn't just a PR exercise, that it's not just tick box making decisions about nice but not crucial issues. And it's really down to the people on the Fab to make sure that that we are heard. And I think we're at a crossroads, really. I can't answer your question.
So I can't think of many issues that are more important than this one.
Yeah.
No. So this is a measuring rod of
yes.
the amount of power that you have.
Yes, and I think when the debacle, the ESL debacle happened, and one of the documents was leaked. I'm not sure that it was Spurs or whether it was the Six, but they talked about legacy fans as though, we know we can rely on legacy fans. It's the new global market that we need to attract.
Yeah.
And I still have that in my Twitter handle, or certainly on the bio. I am a legacy fan, and I'm proud to be one. And they should be looking after the legacy fans. It's the legacy fans that make the club what it is.
Can I make a point here, just in the light of recent developments? Because I would hope that argument is strengthened all the more as a consequence of recent developments in Saudi Arabia. Because Saudi Arabia, if you buy all of the leading golfers, you buy golf. But if you buy lots and lots of big name footballers, you don't buy football, because football is different. And the thing that Saudi Arabia cannot bring to the table, the differential, is the legacy fan. Yeah. So I would hope that that's an argument that can strengthen your case.
I love that, and I'm writing it down.
There we go, Tim. No, it's a really good point. And like we say about the legacy fans, but also the next generation that are coming through. One thing that sort of really irked me about the situation at the moment is I know West Ham are in a different situation with their stadium, but they've managed to offer children's or kids season tickets for something like £300-400. Now, obviously, we don't get anywhere near that at Spurs. And what's the issue in terms of sort of the concessions and what the club have done around that, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, concessions, I don't know if you remember, but when we first were making all the plans to move into the new stadium, we received lots of sort of glossy documents, and it was basically telling us that there would be a huge number of different price points at different areas of the stadium. And we all had to think carefully about where we wanted to sit, because apart from anything else, concessions would be applied up to a certain price point, which I think was 1,100 at that point.
Right.
So we were advised by the club that if we were nearing age of, pensionable age, that we would choose seats where, if we needed to have a cheaper seat, that we would choose seats in those blocks. And lots of people did. Lots of people also didn't sort of read that part of it, and have since moved from where they have traditionally sat with their friends and family, and they've moved away from them into the cheaper blocks, only to be told, oh no, we've sold out of concessionary tickets in this block, that we've reached the cap. What cap? I mean, at the time, the trust argued strongly, and we still argue, that the ticket price should be on the person, not on the ticket. Wherever you are, there should be a concession of whatever rate on your seat, if you are a child, if you're a young adult, and if you're a senior. But that has been eroded. I mentioned earlier the ticket exchange, that's gone. I know that a lot of official supporters clubs find it really difficult when they're given their window, they can't get concessionary prices, so their children and young adults are often having to pay full adult prices. So it's sort of all over the place. And again, it's who are you pricing out? We need young people there. We need people to make a noise.
The other thing I know that the club are quite happy to do is that one of my friends, his son comes with him. They've got tickets next to each other. When he sells his tickets on the exchange, he sells obviously the child tickets, gets remunerated for that amount, half price or whatever it is. But then they're quite happy to sell that ticket on at full price. So the club are even happy to make that extra bit of money on people's tickets. It's just ludicrous.
This is also, the club will also say that they'll still sell the tickets. Like we do see a lot of tourists come to the stadium, which obviously it's great to see. We are an inclusive club, which we do see that. But I was listening to the excellent Brazilian Shirt Name podcast last week, and Tim's mate, I think Simon from Australia, or in Australia, is a City fan. And he said it summed up really well. He said that he's a Man City fan. He's blue to the marrow, and that when you love a club to your core, that is what makes football different. And that's Tim's point earlier as well. And so when you remove that from the stadium, obviously it will affect the atmosphere. significantly, because the tourists, they won't know the songs, they won't know, they won't have the familiarity of people around them. And also morally, you are depriving people who genuinely love the club to their fibre the opportunity and the chance to go, because they're being priced out through and the concessionary changes are crazy. We've seen some, like, it should be, as you said, to the person. I took my son to the cinema yesterday to see Oppenheimer. He paid half price because he's a kid. So it's essentially they're saying, oh, well, we've run out of kids' tickets now, so you have to pay full price. In what other industry does that work? Do other clubs do it like that way?
Well, there are a range of strategies, but no, not as far as we know. We've sort of certainly asked through the Football Supporters Association, and no, this isn't a common thing at all. But it's really hard to pin down actually what is the policy. They're not, it's not written anywhere. We're not seeing this. It seems to be sliding in. Hoping
well, they don't disclose ticket numbers, do they, either? So you've got no idea how many of each tickets are available. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of a lot of things are difficult to know. And for example, like away ticket allocations, we won't go into all that now, but it's hard to know how many tickets are actually being sold. We often get quite a lot of mail on that, for the away prices. But yeah, it just seems so incredibly short-sighted. And as Bren was saying, yes, we do want people from all around the world. I had one guy next to me one match, because the two seats next to me often are different people. And he was clearly from South Korea. It was the first time he'd been to the stadium. He was gutted that Sonny wasn't playing, as you can imagine. But he came on and he scored, I think he scored twice. And this guy who was singing all the Spurs songs, he'd learnt them all, he was crying, literally crying his eyes out when Sonny got the winner. So absolutely welcome. That was fantastic that he was there. But there are others, when they come in, they aren't watching the game even. They're just taking selfies. They go off and have their meal or beers or whatever, halfway through the first half. They come back halfway through the second half. They're just there because it's something to do. It's like going to the theatre or something. They don't. And that's useless. All the money and the research that Daniel Levy put in to having an atmosphere in that stadium where the supporters are by the pitch, it's steeply ranked, the actual fabric of the building is great for acoustics, wonderful for concerts, but absolutely useless if you've got the wrong people in a football crowd and you're playing the wrong football.
Well, this is it. And then when you look at some of the ticket prices for the concerts and the boxing and the other events they have, I think that's the problem, is that they're seeing how much money people are willing to pay for these different events in a stadium. So it's almost like, well, football, we're not really making as much money as we could. I think that probably plays on their mind a little bit. I don't know.
It's middle management paradise, isn't it? What you can measure, you can manage. So what is the measurable here? The measurable is the revenue that we can extract from this particular space. And I would imagine that's how people's careers are being judged. But obviously that's, as we've heard explained, that's ludicrously short-sighted. And Sonny's not going to play for Tottenham forever. No. This was the thing I was struck with in May at the Palace game, just the number of people from South Korea. Brilliant, welcome. But it's not a sustainable business model, is it?
No.
Because he's not going to be there forever. No. But if you get people who are identifying with the club, as Rachel, you did with your daughter, you've got them forever. And in the long term, not only is it more human, it's better business.
Yeah.
But it's harder to manage. And therein, I think, lies the problem in the business structure.
No, agreed.
Rachel, I think it was you or either Martin that said that you were meeting as a trust, you were meeting regularly with the club pre-COVID. Then COVID hit, obviously those meetings had to stop or went to Zoom, and they haven't restarted yet. I'm sure that attempts have been made to get those meetings back. Has there been any traction back from the club to sit down and talk, aside from the Fan Advisory Board?
The meetings did stop during COVID, but it wasn't because of COVID. It was because, here we go again, European Super League debacle. we called for the board to resign, and that was the moment that the meeting stopped. At a board-to-board level. We still have access, and always have had access, to directors of the club, Donna Cullen particularly, the finance people as well. And we have always worked on an operational level, you know, on a daily basis with the supporter liaison officer, ticketing, all the sort of away trip planning, European trips particularly, catering, stewarding. We do a lot of work with the club and always have done, but we do not have the board to board level meetings anymore, and that we are fighting to reinstate that. But basically, at the moment, they are saying, we'll do it through the fan advisory board, and then there are 2 meetings a year between the trust and Donna Cullen, between the trust officers and Donna Cullen, where they sort of shape the year ahead. But I think one of the things that our members used to really value was the chance for them to put their questions directly to Daniel Levy. And we did give every single one to him back in the days when we could. And something that we've really argued for. And I think they are open probably to this, is to have a fan event sort of co-hosted by the trust and the fan advisory board, where fans can have access to Daniel Levy and ask him questions, and also to Ange and our new wonderful captain, Sonny.
So it's not just the Oxford Union or is it Cambridge or Oxford that he gave the interview? Did you watch that, Rachel? I found it interesting.
I thought it was extraordinary. I mean, again, it was just what message that gives to Spurs supporters. You know, that you prepared to do that and answer loads of questions quite openly and honestly and everything, but you wouldn't meet your own fans. And the thing is that way, greater and greater gulfs are created between, the club or the leadership of the club and the supporter base. And actually, they had a fantastic event back in the Pochettino days. It was Hugo Poch and Daniel Levy, hosted by Nihal from Radio 5. And it was such a great event. And even though obviously he's really anxious about what he's going to get asked, they're hosting it. I'm quite sure they can make sure that they get some honest, quite hostile questions that he can answer. Come on, he's paid enough. He can come up with a good answer, I'm quite sure. But at least communicate. The more you sort of shut yourself away, the worse it gets.
Has there been any indication from the club that they may review this decision? Because you have support, we have support from other clubs as well, like the West Ham Supporters Trust. Was it Newcastle? The other one? Wolves, I think.
Wolves, Man City, particularly, because Man City, of course, have a lot of. They're doing a lot of campaigning around ticket prices and travel and fans as well. But yes, the Football Supporters Association are really, really strong on these kind of issues. And sometimes when you want real change to happen in football, you have to go that way. So, for example, with the return of safe standing, we were right at the front of that, but the Football Supporters Association made sure that it was, worked on with the Premier League and with stadiums across the Premier League. Similarly, the cap on away prices, because I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, they were becoming astronomical. It was like £60 to go to the other end of
Hull or Huddersfield or something like that.
Yeah.
Wigan. I think Wigan was 65 quid once.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. When we had our first fan advisory board meeting, everybody on the board from the supporter side insisted that we have this put onto the agenda. So it was discussed. It was the first thing we discussed, and everybody on the fan advisory board was unanimous that this should be opposed. It was agreed that it would get taken back to the executive board after a lot of discussion, And all I can say is the prices are still as they are.
It's not good. It's not good. Tim, where do you think this is taking us in terms of the game? You mentioned Saudi Arabia as well, and ownership of clubs. Like, is this an indication of how teams will be managed from now on at the board level?
Well, I fear that it is. And I always thought that the moment that the thing loses its soul is the moment when the next generation of players can't get into the stadium. But I think we've passed that moment. And I think that's extremely sad. And I don't know how we get it back. I honestly don't. I think Rachel and others like you at clubs all around the country are doing a fantastic job, but with very, very limited leverage. The mission is to try and humanize as much as possible a machine that no longer sees itself as a club in any social sense, but sees itself as a provider of content for the global entertainment industry. And as I said earlier on, I think maybe there's just a chink of opportunity now with Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia will try, but it will stand out for what it doesn't have. And what it doesn't have, I don't think, because the TV transmissions are excellent from the Premier League, not just because of the players, or even the quality of the pitches. They're excellent because the stadiums with the fans right up close.
Yeah.
And you see, so you are watching an event wherever you are in the world, and you are seeing that this event really means something to these people. And I'm not sure Saudi Arabia will be able to do that. I know there are some big traditional clubs in Saudi Arabia, but nothing like what we have. So I think that can become our selling point. The legacy, if you like, is our selling point. Think of Tottenham against Man United on Saturday. Those two clubs. It's the two glory clubs. It's the most glamorous club of the North against the most glamorous club of the South. That thing of that collective identity, that means something. That means that if you're going to the game, or United fans, you're all traveling down to the game in the hope and expectation you're going to see something of real magic that's worthy of the tradition of these collective institutions, these clubs. And this is the thing that Saudi Arabia cannot reproduce. It's a thing that English football has. And maybe, just maybe, coming under external threat from Saudi, and maybe from what might happen in the Americas, maybe that might force some of these people to think about what they have and not destroy what they have in the bid for short-term profits.
So, Rachel, the protest will be outside the ticket office 3:45 to 4:45. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, on Saturday. We obviously really hope that lots and lots of people will come and join us. It's a respect. Can't think of the right word. We will be. It's not going to be. It's not an ENIC out, levy out type demonstration. We hope people will, of all persuasions, will come to the demonstration. It's a single issue demonstration. It is about these ticket price increases, and it's about exploiting loyalty. There'll be, I think there will be a lot of fans there, because it's been really, really supported by all the other groups that we work with, and certainly the sort of stories that we're receiving on social media are really moving, and I think it really has struck a chord, and that everybody just thinks enough is enough on this one. We really do have to all speak up. But it's for an hour. We're not going to be doing any sort of offensive chanting or anything like that. It's going to be polite, but it's going to be really loud, and this is just the beginning of a process. This isn't the end. This is just the first demonstration.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good turnout, if I'm honest, Rachel. And I think obviously there's been planned protests by various sort of fan organised things on Twitter over the last sort of 6 months of the season. Last year, you heard a bit more vocal sort of calls for the chairman and the board to leave within the stadium. But that was sort of a single issue of we just, it's just an angry, we want the chairman and the board out, wasn't it? Whilst I think this is going to get traction because, like you say, it's a single issue and you've given suggestions about how to remedy the situation, which is always important, isn't it? Because you can't just say we don't like something without offering them a sort of a tangible way out of the situation.
That's
so I think
right.
what you've done and the sort of the comms that you put out were really good, really measured, really sensible, as I think they have been in the past. So I'm just really hopeful that the club can listen to this, because on the back of last season, on the back of the disharmony amongst certain parts of our fan base, the fact that this is going to show the club how much of the fan base are opposed to this, I think it's going to be really important.
It's certainly been done in the tone of how to make friends and influence people, isn't it?
It has indeed.
So yeah, Cheeseheads, if you are going to the game, please do join the protests to that stop exploiting loyalty, stop ticket price increases. Let's get the message out there. We hope they listen, and this is the best way to do it. So, and as Rachel said, it will be a peaceful protest, respectful protest, but vocal. So make your voices heard. Speaking of which, we do have Man United coming up on the weekend. So let's move on. First of all, actually, Tim, it's the first time you've been on since Ange joined. Are you happy with the appointment? I guess I know how staunchly you were against Antonio Conte. So how are you feeling with the Ange appointment?
Better. I mean, I thought there were 3 disastrous appointments in a row, and I said that before, any of their teams had kicked a ball. I just didn't understand. No. And I think the people in charge didn't understand the collective identity of the club. And I met him once. This is going back a long, long time. I don't know if you remember that Club World Cup, the kind of pioneer-ish edition that happened in Rio at the start of 2000. When Man United came over, they had to miss the FA Cup because of it. Yeah. He was the coach of the South Melbourne, the champions of Oceania, who were actually a Greek club. I'm not sure they exist in the professional Australian league now, because they've kind of tried to phase out those ethnic clubs. And I met him the day of the draw for that competition. I met him, and because he was one of the few coaches who could speak English, I grabbed him for an interview with the World Service, which we used to do down the phone. And you'll know, Brendan, that the old style street phones here, they're called big ears, because the phone, in order to be able to hear anything, the covering, the plastic covering, is like a big ear. So I got him in one of those, and as he's talking to me, as he's giving an answer, he didn't half bang his head on the plastic covering. Really, and give him credit, carried straight on. What a pro, what a trooper. So I liked him from then, vaguely, just because of that incident, I've kind of vaguely followed his career ever since. There are things there that I think we needed so badly. He's a top bloke. He just comes across as a top bloke. And oh, hallelujah, glory, hallelujah, he wants to play football in the opposition's half of the field.
Yeah.
Whether he can, especially in a situation where he just lost the undoubted world-class player, whether this is going to work, I don't know. But again, from afar, so I say this with humility, all of you are much, much closer to this than I am. I would see the objective now. Forget about the silverware and all that, Hopefully that will come. But for me, the absolute priority is for the club to get in touch with its historic identity. And I can see an attempt to do that. And even if it's finishing 9th or 10th over the next couple of years, but playing with a little bit of swagger, a little bit of style, and you can see some progress, that for me will be okay. Is that a widespread feeling among the fan base, or am I
not all of them?
That one?
Not all of them. I think the fan base is split from what you can tell on social media. Anyway, I think generally most people for the last few seasons have been bored. I've certainly struggled doing certain podcasts where there's nothing positive to talk about. You're like, yeah, we got through that. We won 2-1 somehow, mostly because of something like Harry Kane or Son or something like that. And I think just watching the first few games in pre-season and the game last weekend, where the ball was predominantly at our players' feet and it was in the opposition half, is what we've all been calling out for. You know, Poch tried to play in that way a little bit, and I know there's subtle differences in the tactics and the way they play, but it's the, you know, that feeling of we're trying to win a football match rather than we're trying to not lose and snatch a football match, which I think the fans have, you know, been struggling with. There's always the call for trophies because it's just been such a long time, and we've, you know, we're a club with a great history of winning trophies. I don't think we've quite come to terms as a fan base with the reality of football and how money does win you things. I think that's been an issue, but that's the problem with the new stadium. We were promised that this will be our opportunity to compete with the big clubs, and we're not quite seeing that yet. So I think at the bare minimum, we need to get back to playing the sort of football we want to see. So I agree with that, Tim. It's a start. But, you know, I've got faith in Ange. I really do. I think he seems like a really top bloke. He's been successful wherever he's been. So, you know, the only thing the club could do is sell our best player to try and make it hard for him, right?
Rachel, you said that you're at the Shakhtar game, and I'm assuming, obviously, you're going to the United game on Saturday. You said there was just a big difference both in the atmosphere and the way we played. You hoping for more of the same against United?
Yeah, I mean, having said that, I also said that I didn't get the feeling that Harry was about to leave. So ignore me. Basically. I wasn't. I was actually, my seat was really near where the managers were. So because on those sort of games you can choose where you want to sit. And they're all the same price, which is a great idea. But yeah, so when I've forgotten the question, Brent, what did you ask me?
Just the change in atmosphere with the way we're playing, just that the crowd getting more, seeing front foot football.
Yeah, totally. So the fans that were there were absolutely up for it and really positive. It was a lovely, lovely atmosphere in the concourses, in the stadium. Everybody, you know, when Ange came out and, you know, did his first sort of round of applause, everybody was, you know, incredibly supportive. The only thing I disagreed with you on, Tim, is yes, it's okay if we finish 9th or 10th for a couple of years. Spurs fans are not that patient. It wouldn't be okay. We need European football anyway. So, I also, the way I felt was, I'm not going to say that anybody was a bully, but what I am going to say is that the feeling that I was getting from the players was of people who felt free again. They were they looked like they're, you know, shoulders back. They were ready to go for a new season and feeling happy. I really felt that there was this sort of happiness on the pitch, which it's only when you see it again that you realize it just wasn't there. People were playing through terror, I think. Terror, or, you know, who knows where it was from. It was a really difficult season for the players with 4 different managers at different times, and obviously a big bereavement at the club as well. And the atmosphere from the stands was understandably pretty awful. And we weren't giving, by the end of the season, we were just, you know, can this awful season end? And they must all have known that Harry was wanting to leave as well. And I actually think that, yeah, we had 3 terrible managerial appointments. I agree, Tim. You know, Mourinho, how could that ever have worked with a club like ours, unless you were going to completely change and buy the sort of players that he would need? We didn't. It couldn't work. And I think that actually Harry leaving now, of course, no one wants to lose their best player. But if he's going to go, maybe now isn't the worst time, because the new manager can do his thing and work knowing who he's got, and work to the players that he will have. What is disappointing, obviously, is that over the last 4 years, we've regressed to the point that our star player feels that there's no viable alternative but to leave. But seeing his interviews since he's left, he's so happy to have gone. I've kind of got over it.
Yeah, you have to just forget about him, Rachel.
If you didn't want to be here, then, you know, off.
This United game will be the return of the White Hart Lane drum. Tim, did you know that the drum's coming back, Tim? First of all,
no, excellent.
But there's a caveat.
That's being moderated by the club. Do you think he's got like a walkie-talkie and they're like, right, you can drum now, drum. But apparently it's not going to be continuous. Like, it's not going to disrupt you from, having a chat. That's what they said.
It's actually a question from one of our patrons, Rufus. So, Rachel, were the trust involved in the drum coming back? And how on earth is the club going to police the drum?
I mean, it's extraordinary how communication works with the club, because we were involved with a focus group, and Return of the Shelf, who's been doing a lot of work on this, THFC flags. There's lots of groups who are doing a lot of work to help with the atmosphere. The drum, the return of the drum, has always been, I would say, about Brexit level percentages, same as leaving out sort of percentages. Right. Very, very mixed response. And we basically helped to formulate the survey that was sent to all match-going fans. Those results haven't actually been communicated back to us formally, so I can't confirm that the drum's coming back. I'm getting this from various WhatsApp groups, and I assume that the club are going to have a conductor, are they, who are going to say, now, you can do it. No, zip it. Who's going to be sitting next to this person, and did they know that? Who is the person? And I also hear talk of a bugle.
Bugle.
As long as he's not doing the last post.
That's a big comment.
Yeah. No, in fairness though, the drum did used to sort of create some atmosphere and get people going back in the days where it was quite a difficult sort of game to watch, and he sort of tried to but there were some games where the drum would start and the football was so bad the fans just wouldn't carry on anyway. So it's good to be back. There's a big tifo at the start. It's going to be the first game back. I think it's going to be a good atmosphere at the weekend. Just hope the football doesn't spoil it, as we always say.
Well, United haven't started very well. They stole a win over from Wolves with that ridiculous penalty decision. So that midfield of Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes has some work to do. So hopefully the rejuvenated Bissouma and Maddison should run things. And Tim, I just want to come to you actually with the South American contingent, particularly Davinson Sanchez, because he came on because Romero got his concussion, which again from Ange, amazing how he handled it. Superb. He was like, this is the doctor's decision, not the players, not mine. The doctor's decision. So handled that situation really well. But just the dread when Davinson came on, and he played really well. Do you think he's got a chance to?
I do because there is a player there, and he was signed for a reason. He's quick, and that asset will be much more in evidence now we're defending higher up the pitch. Yeah. You don't want him defending close to his own goal. You don't want that. That's the throw him to the lions. But higher up the pitch, mistakes that he makes, he's still got the time to get back and put it right. And I would hope that this is something that Ange will be very good at, giving him confidence. Fresh start, I think so. Giving him confidence. I think it's not really a fan base historically that's known for turning on players to that extent. One of the things, I hope this still happens actually, but one of the things I always loved is, most clubs, when former players come back, they just get booed remorselessly. I always think that's really stupid, and usually with Tottenham, it was always the case of a warm welcome for our old friend, And one of the few games I've been at the last few years, it was still at Wembley. It was Stoke, and Peter Crouch came back. Yeah, and he got a lovely reception, and I love that. And over the years, players have been picked out. And Venables was picked out when he played there. John Pratt was kicked out. Was picked on, and dealt with it brilliantly. John Pratt, he said, "Well, if they're picking on me, they're letting the rest go by, so that's fine by me." Dealt with it fantastically. Gary Stevens got some of it as well, and had to play through that. But it usually it's not a cruel crowd, and I hated that booing that he got. I really hated it. So I hope that people can rally to him. And I hope that now we're defending higher up the pitch, his pace, which is his greatest asset as a defender, I think, as a big defender, will be more in evidence, and you'll see more of the good side of him than the bad.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. I think whilst they get booed, it's the same with Eric Dyer. I think it's because they're players that they think the club should have moved on, and they've had opportunities to do so, but they should have done, and they haven't. And it's almost booing the fact that they're still at the club to play. But I think out of all the defenders we've got as backups, Sanchez, like you say, because of his pace and because of the system we play, is probably the most suited. So I can see that he'll be playing. I mean, he was doing Cruyff turns as the last man at the weekend. So Ange has probably instilled some confidence in him if he's doing that. But what about the rest of the South Americans? Because obviously Harry's left a big gaping hole up front, and we've got the main Brazilian man, Richarlison, to fill those boots.
Harry, you have to replace with two players, don't you?
Yeah.
And that's Maddison and Richarlison. I couldn't understand why we bought Richarlison. I said this at the time. I can't see where he was going to fit in, because the aspects of the side that had been working back into the previous season was the front three. With Harry between Sonny, and I always call him Cooler Shaker because it's just easier, and so you think, well, where's he going to go? Because his obvious position there in that formation is Sonny's position. Because he can't really do much setting up the play, Richarlison. No. He's a racehorse with blinkers, front to goal. That's what he is. That's why he's been very successful for Brazil. Brazil had plenty of people making the bullets, and he would fire them. So now you're hoping that he can build that relationship with Maddison. It's a huge season for him. I think a really, really big season for him. But at least now he's got the chance. Because now you know what his role is in the team. It's clear how he fits in the team now. And this, for me, is the biggest question mark and the most important one. How is that relationship between Maddison and Richarlison going to develop? If it works, he can score goals. The thing I like about him is that he's a big personality. And it won't bother him that he had a bad season last time round, and he's not going to hide. So that about him I like. As Ange has kind of come out and said, and I said this at the time when he was bought and got a shitload of abuse from Tottenham fans. Apparently I'm part of the worldwide conspiracy against Tottenham Hotspur. Vélez is one for the long term. There's not a lot there,
I saw an interview you did, Tim, and my heart sank.
It might be, but this and Angie said this. He said, you ain't going to see him first part of the season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a huge step up, and he's going to need time to do it. So that's a long-term solution. Rather, he might surprise us, but I think Ange is aware of what they're getting there. They're getting a really untried 19-year-old from. Unfortunately, the Argentine league is very weak these days because it's selling to the States and Brazil as well as all the usual places that it sells to. So Vélez, we'll have to see. The one who really surprised me, and I didn't see all of the Brentford game because I was broadcasting during it, and my broadcasting position is the TV's to the back, so it's hard to broadcast and watch at the same time. But the one who amazed me was the way he was using with lots of width. He was using Emerson Royale cutting in, and I've never seen him do that before. A Brazilian fullback or wing back who just keeps the pitch big, bombs down the wing. And I didn't understand his being bought because in that Conte scheme, the wing backs are absolutely vital. They've got so much riding on them, and I don't think he was good enough to do it. So, he didn't really come off, but it was really interesting to see him in that role, cutting in. I've maybe the other fella, maybe Pedro Porro, can do that even better. But that was interesting to me to see, because that was something I'd never seen from the player before, him drifting into those positions. And I think we could see from the goal that Brentford weren't expecting it either.
No, I think that's the idea of the tactic, isn't it? It puts players into positions where they're not, the opposition are expecting them to be. Him and Udogie. Udogie looks like a really good player as well. I've been quite impressed with some of the signings this season, must be said. But up front, it does concern me because, like you said, Valise isn't going to be ready. Apart from that, we've got Dane Scarlett, who's a similar age, similarly unproven. A lot is riding on Richarlison this year. And I've seen Brendan's Brazilian Supporters Trust WhatsApp groups aren't too pleased with Richarlison either.
Yeah, they're brutal. They're brutal because they're Brazilian. So the Brazil Spurs guys. And Tim, you did the podcast with them recently, so thank you for that. But yeah, because they're Brazilians, they're used to winning. So Brazilians are they're just so demanding. They're so they're just tearing into Richarlison. I'm defending the English guys defending him, and the Brazilians are cutting him to shreds.
But do you think that? I mean, you said, Tim, that you have to replace Kane with two players, and the Maddison-Richarlison relationship is going to be so important. Against Brentford, there were 2 or 3 where Maddison put these balls through, and they were so close. Richarlison was so close to getting on them, but he didn't. Do you think that we still need to sign another striker, though?
Point's been made, with Scarlett and Valise. There's the possibility of playing Sonny there, isn't there? And he I suppose, is the reserve centre forward now. Yeah. I worry about how much ground he's going to have to cover. Because he really did track back, didn't he? There's perhaps the possibility of playing Perisic where he's playing and playing Sonny inside if Richarlison gets injured. But yeah, you're right. It is a bit thin up top, isn't it?
Yeah.
Alfie Devine, because I saw him playing for the England under-20s in the under-20 World Cup, and he looked great. I really like the look of Alfie Devine. I wonder if he's worth an opportunity.
Well, this is it. We don't know what appetite Ange has got for playing the youngsters, but you're right. There's a few that are going to be banging on the door now from that youth setup. There's a few good players in there. It just depends whether they're going to fit in, I suppose. He's obviously played Skip from the start, so he quite, likes to use the young talent. I think
I've got to get over the sale of Harry Winks. Harry Winks, we're from the same place, and he went to a school that I went to as well. So he was my representative on the field. So I'm sad that he's gone.
Well, you still get to see him play. He didn't go far. Put it that way.
I think one of the things about Ange, though, is that he's made it really clear with his leadership structure that it's everybody has got to be leaders, and the youngest person at the club can still be a leader by the way they behave. With attack, it's attacking waves rather than get the ball to Harry, whatever you do. And I do think it's much more about collective responsibility, which is a really good thing. And in actual fact, when I was at the Shakhtar game, obviously, who stood out? Harry Kane, 4 goals. He was brilliant. But, Maddison was fantastic as he was against Brentford. But I thought what was rather beautiful about the whole thing was that Harry does his 4 goals, comes off, and then, oh my God. Sorry? Jane Scarlett. Yeah. Sorry, Scarlett. Comes on and gets a beautiful goal right at the end.
Nice.
And I just think it's a real shame that we aren't in a European competition, because those players would have been given more chances.
Yeah,
I remember coming back one year and going to a Europa League game, and everyone around me was saying, "Yeah, it's Harry Kane. He's the Thursday night striker."
But
how important those Thursday nights were for making him the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whatever day you want striker.
Yeah.
On the subject of leadership that Rachel mentioned, Tim, we do have a new vice captain in Christian Romero. Once he's obviously got the all clear with the concussion protocols, do you think that will help him? That responsibility will just get a bit more maturity from him?
Well, and I think what also helps is the World Cup's out of the way now. Been there, done that, so what's he got now? All right, he's got a Copa America at the end of the season, but he's climbed. That mountain has been climbed. Time to focus on week in, week out. So I'm hoping for a really strong Christian Romero. I'm not as wild in him as Summer. I think he's the best centre-back that Argentina has come up with in a long while, which unfortunately isn't saying a great deal. You know, it's been a position, and it nearly cost them right at the end of that World Cup final. You know, that was nearly the narrative of the World Cup final, that the centre backs let them down again. But as someone who grew up with Aussie, I love having an Argentine in the side. I wish, and I've often thought that this is one of the big historic mistakes the club made when Aussie was coach. We, instead of buying all of those strikers, we should have become the entry point for Argentine midfielders, because it just fits. It fits who we are. I think that's one of those many mistakes that meant that we missed that sliding door just as the Premier League was really taking off, and we spent so long playing catch up as a consequence. And you thought we were there, you know, a few years ago. You thought the catch up process had all done, you know, it's all there, stadium, and these last few years have been really, really disappointing, haven't they? So that's what I'm looking for this year, a year that just helps us get back on track for the future.
Yeah, great.
We've been over an hour, so it's time for predictions. I'll start with you, Rachel. What do you think the score will be against United on Saturday?
I mean, I am an incredibly optimistic person. There's no point not being optimistic. I'm going to say 3-1. And the 1 will only be because of VAR and, you know, handing Man United something.
Always happens. Tim, what are your predictions?
One of my favourite memories is it's not long before the 1990 World Cup, where there wasn't any blanket TV, and where Gaza, before that World Cup, he was still our little secret. You know, he kind of belonged to us, and it was only in the World Cup that the nation just realised how incredibly good he was. But it was just towards the end of that season where you could see he'd been injured. I think he'd broken an arm or something like that. So he'd had an injury layoff. But at the end of that season, looking forward to the World Cup, he was absolutely on fire. And one of his finest performances was at home to United. We won 2-1, but it was one of those moments when you know you're in the presence of something really great. Every time he got the ball, the stadium went quiet. You know, what's he going to do now? And it was all brilliant. So in tribute to him, we're going to win 2-1.
And who's going to be the Gaza?
I don't know. Maybe it's going to come from where we least expect it. I don't know. Maybe this is Maddison's home debut, isn't it? In serious action. So maybe it's going to be him.
Franco?
Yeah, I won't disagree with that. I watched the United game. I agree. They weren't great in the midfield. If we can win that battle, which I think with Basuma looking on really good form at the moment, I think there's a good chance we will. So, gonna fingers crossed for a 2-1. But you know, it's United. They always seem to just do something annoying against us. I totally agree with the VAR decision's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. Well, I'll stick with that then. I'll go 2-1. I'll go 3-1. I'll agree with Rachel. 3-1. It'll be a fantastic atmosphere. Franco, anything from football prizes we need to mention?
Nope.
Great. Great. Well, let's wrap things up. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us again. Please do remember to join the protest. If you're going to the game, we know you're listening in your thousands, and a lot of people that listen do go to games. So 3:45 to 4:45 outside the ticket office. You can do an hour without drinking neck oil. You can just stand there and support a worthy cause, which is keeping those prices down. So, Rachel, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Tim, lovely to see you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. A pleasure and an education. And Rachel, more power to your collective elbow room.
Thank you very much.
Franco, cheers, man.
No worries. See you all for the weekend pod, Saturday, Sunday, some point.
Yeah, do look out for that. And also look out for the YouTube. This will be out tonight. The YouTube will be out Friday night, so watch out for that. And as ever, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.